What's up, guys? Pat Flynn here with Jay Papasan, co-author of The One Thing, one of my all-time favorite books, and I feel it is required reading for all entrepreneurs and actually everybody in this world, I feel. So, Jay, welcome to SPI TV. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm really honored.
So we're here in Austin, and we're going to be talking about The One Thing, and there's so many things we could do in and around this book, but I really wanted to know kind of where this book came from with you and Gary putting it together. I mean, you guys are Keller Williams Realty Incorporated, and so why a book? Where did this come from?
If you look at the history of Gary Keller, how he built the company over 30 years, and you ask him what his one thing is, I think it's always been teaching. And then, over time, it started with, him coaching an agent, and then maybe he's teaching in real estate school. And then he looks up, I think around 2002 is when we started writing together. And the big idea is like, oh, I can teach through a book. Like that's a bigger and bigger audience. And so he saw it as an extension of how he was building his company, right? It's how I can spread my value proposition. And The One Thing was a big kind of departure for us because instead of a real estate book, we're writing a business productivity book. So it was kind of a big adventure.
Did you have any goals when you were writing it? Like what was the main purpose of it for the company, really?
Anytime you write a book as a business professional, now you can come in and say, well, we wrote the book on that. And we wanted to be known for being productivity, efficient, effective business people. That's a win for us with the people that we serve. And we felt like we had some really good ideas. And it's funny, the actual idea is, I wish I could say in retrospect that's how it goes. It was an essay. We wrote a real estate course on how to lead gen for a new agent for a business. And Gary liked it, and he said, but it's kind of, He goes, let me take it home for the weekend. And he wrote a short essay called The Power of One. And I remember when he walked in with that essay, it's like 10 pages long. I was like, I've been in publishing for almost 20 years. I was like, this is his good to great. This idea of focusing on the priority more than anything else, this is his gift to the world. And I remember I said, this is a book. And that's actually, it was just like, this is absolutely the book that you live, and therefore you're authentic, and we live as a company. And so I felt like the goals kind of came with it. It's like, oh, and that would do this for us. So I kind of got the cart before the heart.
That's so interesting. Started with an essay, and then how long at that point until it actually turned into a book?
Okay, so we're writing a book about focus, and the real estate market collapses, and we got distracted. We actually wrote another best-selling book called Shift, because we were like, the number one thing we could do for our company was tell people how to survive a shift. So we actually wrote a book during the process of researching it, but it was about 5 years, roughly, from that essay to publication in April of 2013.
So April 2013, and it's the end of 2015 now.
Right.
And we were just talking right before we hit record about how much this book has just taken off kind of over the past year. And I didn't realize it was published in 2013. It only feels like, it feels like to me that it just came out because everybody's talking about it now. Why do you think that's happening right now?
I've been in publishing a long time and got a chance to work on some big books. And this is, even our publisher, we sit down with him earlier this week and he's like, this is an aberration. This is very unusual. And we track our weekly sales going all the way back to 8 weeks out because the first 8 weeks for us was launch. And so it's a little artificial. So we call that all organic sales. Last April, you look up a year after publication and we were up month over month 35%. And then we go out another year and we're up 35% again. And I can see the point. Is April, a year after the book got published, there was this long downward trend, and then all of a sudden it starts inching up, 50 copies a week here and there. And I can say we're doing all these blog interviews, all these things. I think it's people actually had time, busy people had time to read this book and say, hey, you should read this. Because I hear that, like, oh, I gave it to my uncle. I didn't read it, but then he said, this is really good. And then I read it, and I hear variations of that story. So I think it's long tail word of mouth.
I think that's exactly what it is. And I heard about it from Michael Hyatt, and now I'm sharing it with everybody because it's just completely changed my life. And I
didn't even know that Michael Hyatt had read the book. So that's really cool, because I look up to him too. So that's awesome.
It's crazy. So what do you think for all the potential authors out there, or those of you who have books already, what is that thing, that one thing they could include in that book that would make something like that happen? Why do you think that this word of mouth is so popular with this particular book?
I think that where Gary and our partnership has lasted for so long is when we talk about our favorite books. They change our paradigm in how we see something, but then they give us a simple path to go do it. We're doers. I'm reading this book not to be intellectually enlightened. I want to read this book because I want to do things better. And a lot of books enlighten us, but don't tell us what to do. and the ones that just tell us what to do kind of put us to sleep.
Right.
And so it's that finding that balance. So if someone out there is trying to write their book to drive their business, my advice to you would be you need to inspire them to get them going down that path, right? Tell them what they need to know, the big new paradigm, but then kind of at least give them the fundamentals. What are the 3 or 4 steps they have to do? And keep it simple. And when people live it and feel the impact is when they start talking about it.
So I'm in the middle of marketing my upcoming book, Will It Fly? And I found that by taking a lot of it out, and you had told me this when we had talked before of what's called killing your darlings. Or
right, murdering your darlings,
yes.
depending on who you quote. I think Faulkner said it first.
And Stephen King said it later.
Yeah.
But tell us what that means, because I think it's really important. And it actually, in taking a lot of things out, which was really hard to do, because I love those things, like you would love a darling, and because of that, the book just became so much better. So can you speak on what exactly that means and how we can use that?
Our publisher was our objective guide on this. He was, when we turned in this manuscript, this is about 220 pages. It would have been 430.
Wow.
I think we cut the book by like 44%. And he said, this is great. I mean, we were so into it. Everything mattered to us because we've been living it for 5 years. We were all in. And he just said, you know what? People don't need that much information. That might be a second book or a lecture or a workshop. What are the core essentials they need? Because when someone buys something called The One Thing, they don't expect a doorstop.
Right.
So the whole thing is a lot of times, they say the sculpture is chipping away the things that don't look like a horse. But a lot of times, if you just have, especially an objective person, really holding you accountable, an editor, a partner, if you say, look, what's really truly necessary versus what I like, what's necessary is a much smaller group. And that serves the person better. It's less complicated for them.
I have to ask you, is there anything that was left out that you wish was put back in?
Gosh, there's one chapter I do wish we had made shorter. There are a couple of ideas. The idea of the low-hanging fruit. And it was almost one of the lies. And I still think about it and I still teach it. And that when people are on the path to their one thing, you see this low-hanging fruit. And as a business person, you might actually make a profit doing it. But if you don't have your compass really engaged, that could be taking you in the opposite direction of where you ultimately want to go. So it's incredibly seductive. And so we had worked up a chapter on that, and it just didn't make the cut because it was kind of far down the line.
That's a really interesting concept, though. I feel like that in itself could be a book.
Well, it's something I've been kicking around. We probably will work with someone and probably write the 7th lie, the low-hanging fruit. And that might be like a little bonus for the people who are in our community. And, I've been teaching it long enough. I think we could probably pull that together. So I guess I'm on the hook now.
Right? Or we could do a whole video on just the low-hanging fruit, because that's, I know how attractive that is when it's just right there. But maybe it's not the one that you should.
It justifies our entrepreneurial need to go for the shiny new thing.
Right.
We're always like, squirrel! And we want to rush off and do that thing. And when it's called the low-hanging fruit, it's got fruit attached. So we can say, look at the bounty. And so it gives us that rationalization for doing what maybe we shouldn't be doing. So it's a very dangerous thing.
Right. Now, writing a book isn't necessarily low-hanging fruit because it's a lot of work. So
it's a grind.
It is a grind. Trust me. But what are some tips you have? Several best-selling books now for brand new authors or people who have books, but maybe they're just struggling through them and creating new ones. What are some tips for authors out there?
I think if your audience is a lot of entrepreneurs, so one of the things they're going to suffer from is impatience to get done. The excitement of the idea, it's hard to hold that through the process of actually creating a quality product. Your name is attached to this book wherever it goes, and you're not there to defend it. And so you really want it to represent your best thinking. So take your time, but chip away every single day. I was reflecting before our conversation that you go through, I'm in research mode, I'm in writing mode, and I'm in promotion mode. And for a long time in my career, the promotion mode was 3 or 4 months, and then you're back in research for the next thing. This has been 2 years. But you can stay in that writing research mode for, I've done it for almost 4 years straight in the development of this book, and you get so powerful. So I would say never get out of that if you can avoid it.
But the writing and the research should be separate, correct? Because I found that, at least when I write, I have to be either in editing research mode and or creative writing mode. If I combine the two, I don't get anything done. I've sat in front of the computer for hours with just a paragraph to show for it. And it's a terrible, terrible feeling. There's a lot of emotions that go through writing a book. And so
on your first time, you're doubting, like, maybe I can't do this. But experienced authors run it. I mean, they call it writer's block, all those things. Ray Bard, our publisher, who's really brilliant, he calls that first phase the mad scientist phase. You know, you're reading things, you're researching, you may be whiteboarding ideas. That can be really electric and fun. I enjoy that. I mean, I'm into self-learning, and so I can even indulge in the research phase. The writing phase, that creativity portion, is a separate thing. You've now, a good friend of mine that wrote FedEx Direct, he said, the person who's the most creative person is the person who connects the most dots. So have the most dots to connect. So he's really big on the research. And so I love that. And then you have all these dots, they're making crazy connections, and you're writing that. That's a different mindset. Editing is a completely different mindset. So we went all the way to that 440-page finish before we really started editing the book, because that's the architectural phase. Now you're going through and measuring, and it's a whole different part of your brain, right, left, you know, that whole business. So yeah, I agree with you. You want to be in a mode. I go from research to writing. Editing is a separate mode for me.
How do you write? What are the tools that you use? I know there's a lot of different tools out there. Scrivener, some people use note cards to organize their stuff. I mean, do you have something special?
I guess the tools that I use Word, like a lot of people do. With my researchers, we share Google Docs and Google Drive so that we have everything there. I use Evernote a lot. A lot of our research these days, you can get a lot of white papers off the web, like legitimate research. It used to be pretty fishy. But you can get some really legit stuff there and save a lot of quotes. So I have about 3 or 4 trusted receptacles. My main thing though, and I think Scrivener does this for you, when I'm in writing mode, I have to shut down my Firefox browser. I shut down my email. I've already turned off all my notifications. I go into bunker mode that we talk about in the book. And I have a Chrome browser because I sometimes want to look something up on Google, right? A quick fact. I've got no bookmarks. I mean, I've got nothing there, no saved passwords, so I can't get distracted. So that's a real important thing for me. And I've also got a standing desk. I don't know about your...
I do have a standing desk too.
I actually find that I have to sit half on a stool, half off when I'm writing, because if I stand, I start to fidget. In research mode, I can stand. In interview mode, I can stand. But writing, I like the standing desk because I'm kind of alternating. I can pace around the room when I'm stuck and go right back to it. But that's my environment. But I've known people... I edited a book called The 11th Draft, and I got to interview all these amazing writers. And some of them were like, I have to be in bed, in a robe, and a yellow, legal notepad. I mean, literally that specific for the muse to start talking to them. It's a habit. So make it a healthy habit. And if you don't have the habit yet, then think, I want to be in an environment that's conducive to focus, and that's where I want to start finding this muse, for lack of a better word. And the more often you go there, the faster you'll find her.
I love that. And the bunker concept is so powerful. Another powerful topic that you talk about in the one thing is time blocking. Which is like bunkering your time for that particular thing that you're trying to do. But that's something all of us struggle with. And I found that was really hard for me. I found my extra time to write in the morning. So I would wake up an hour earlier.
I approve.
And that hour just added up over time. Do you have any tips for authors out there who just, in their heads, are like, I can't write a book because I just don't have the time?
Okay. Well, just a comment. If you started getting up earlier, I hope you started going to bed earlier, because that sleep deficit will get you eventually. I almost always, if you've got a full-time life, full-time job, everything's going, the place you're going to find a protected time that you can build a habit in is almost always going to be in the morning. And it's usually before 8 a.m. So it's just a fact. Most creative people want to sleep in. So that creates a little bit of a conflict. But it's a reality. You need to do it every day, or at least 5 days a week if that's your work schedule. Some people just want to take off the weekends, and I support that. But whatever your rhythm is, 5 or 7 days, you want to do it at the same time every day so that your brain just starts to learn, hey, I'm going into this mode now. I should be at a desk, or I should be in that place. So, I've talked to people. The first habit, we talk about 66 days to form a habit. You're making an appointment with yourself at this certain time. If you're not used to getting up early, make the first journey is I'm going to start getting up an hour earlier, and I'm just going to indulge in whatever I want to do. I don't care. I'm going to binge on Netflix. But for the first couple of months, until I'm used to waking up, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to start writing. Because now that first habit was just learning to get up.
Right.
It won't sabotage the second one.
Because we want the results so fast, but taking those steps there.
But how long does it take you to write a book? I mean, if you're doing it fast, you can get it done in 5 or 6 months. If you're doing it like us, the slowpoke method, it could take you 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But no, the time block is making an appointment with yourself to do your most important work. And I find that when you have that appointment there, most people will follow it. You just have to kind of protect that time and make a real commitment, a stand, like I'm gonna do this thing.
Right, no interruptions, no distractions, and knowing kind of your environment that you're in that would distract you and stopping that from happening. That's what I have.
That's the bunker, right?
Yeah.
Like, where am I gonna do this activity? There's a study that didn't make it into the book. And they tried to get people to exercise for 20 minutes. And they had 3 groups. They had the control group, they just said exercise for 20 minutes. They had the motivation group, who were told all the benefits of exercise. And then they had what was called the intention group. And the intention group had the motivation, they had the little pamphlet on health, but they also had to write down on these days, at this time, at this place, you know, day, time, place, I'm gonna exercise for 20 minutes. So the first 2 groups were 35% exercise, 38% exercise. The last group was 91%.
Wow.
So the simple act of mentally blocking that time off, the time and the place, they put a when and a where to their why, and it kind of 3 times more effective.
Right. I mean, I literally have to schedule those moments. I have that in my schedule to write every morning, or else it won't get done. You know, if you don't schedule it, sometimes it's just not going to get done.
Well, one last story on this, but like, I think the most successful people in the world, if you opened up their calendars, you would see a lot of little moments that are blocked off that say things like write, make my calls. I think successful people intuitively or kind of through education figure this out, that the most important time blocks invites of every day are the ones they make with themselves to do their most important work. And you know, when I interviewed with Gary Keller back in 2002, I heard he was going to write a book. The first thing he asked to see was my calendar.
Wow.
Thank goodness I'm an introvert, right? Because I only had appointments with myself because I didn't want to go see a lot of people. But he's like, oh wow, so you have your to-do list on every day. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of how I work already. And I had no idea that he'd already started the interview process. But in his mind, like, that's success. Success is making commitments in time to do what you need to do.
Love it. Guys, my mind is blown. I hope yours is too. Jay Papasan, co-author of The One Thing. Go ahead and pick it up if you haven't already. Link you can find below. And Jay, thank you for coming by. We appreciate you, and I think you've inspired a lot of authors out there to get their thing done.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you.